Hi everybody, Tim Krause again. Today is the 4th of September 2023. My goodness, well into 2023, closing in fast on the holidays again. We're doing another video today. We have been focused on doctrines that are fundamental to the message. We started with the 7 church ages and demonstrated where the 7 church ages, that dispensational view was completely false and erroneous. We also spoke about, as an example, this last video that we did about Malachi 4 and about how William Branham inserted himself improperly into Scripture in order to point to himself and make his message the premier thing that you should be considering or that you should be thinking about. Today we're going to start to talk about vindications. Vindications that William Branham claims and the message ministers today tell us that vindicate William Branham as a prophet of God. We're going to start with the main one. We're going to start with one that that's photographed frequently, or that people post a photograph and they manipulate photographs to make it work. We're going to talk about the cloud. Again, we're going to use the methodology in Isaiah 28:10 for precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line upon line, here a little and there a little. We're also going to use 2 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every word be established. So just as usual, everything that we do, all the video clips, there's going to be a link down here to the study notes and all the video clips for you to find on the Google Drive. You're welcome to go out and take a look at those. Make sure that we're not doing anything to edit them nefariously. But I want to start like this. We're told repeatedly that William Branham is the most vindicated prophet in history. One of those vindications is the cloud. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to see Chad Lamb on the 10th of August 2014, way back. Chad Lamb talked about the cloud, and he showed the pictures from the Life magazine in the cloud. We're going to take a look at that video first. So here's Chad Lamb way back in 2014 talking about the cloud. Here we go.
So this is the magazine, and this is an article. And a high cloud ring of mystery. They talk about it, and they show several different pictures there. And it's the pyramid shape, it's the capstone, we know all that.
All right, so there we had Chad Lamb in 2014 showing us the picture of the cloud. Now, let's take a look at that photo for ourselves. I've blown it up here so that you can take a look at it. It's going to be right up here so that you guys can look at it. There we go. It's going to be right there. Here we have a picture of the cloud. Now, you'll notice that it's oriented a little bit differently. Let's take a look at it a little bit closer. This is a closer look of that cloud. You'll notice that if you want to put Jesus' face into it, you have to rotate it 90 degrees to the left so that the double streaks actually turn out to be on top. And you'll notice that in this particular picture, it's different than what it looks like when you rotate it. But you notice the gap in the middle. This is really important. The gap in the middle of that cloud is completely empty. You notice there is no face in the gap in the cloud. Okay? So how do other message ministers represent the cloud? Well, we're going to take a look at 3 videos. One of them is Tom Ray. This is May the 21st, 2023. He uses the false cloud picture. The dark area inside the cloud circle is false in this particular picture. So we're going to see that. We're also going to see David Seiler, the 13th of August, 2023, the cloud with a face, and also Paul Moritz. This is the 11th of July, 2021. Everything he said has come to pass and is coming to pass, and he's going to show a picture of the cloud. So we're going to take a look at those videos real quick, and then we'll come back and chat with them. Here we go.
Well, if you want to turn the picture like this and look, you can probably see from the audience, it's Christ. His eyes look here just as perfect as it would be wearing the white wig of supreme deity, the judge of all heavens and earth. Can you see his eyes, his nose, his mouth? Just turn the picture this way. The way they had it this way. The way it's supposed to be. He is the supreme judge. There is none other but him. And this is the perfect identification, again, the vindication that this message is the truth.
But yet when God would want to use many different things to be able to, as we're looking at in this subject of Revelation chapter 10, when it deals with the opening of this seal, what we want to look at, that we know that God clothed himself by the external appearance of a cloud. Now, even though it looking as a cloud, we know that the cloud itself was made up of 7 angels, which actually surrounded his face, which was the appearance. We've seen his eyes, his nose, his mouth as it is hidden there in the cloud. We've seen that part of him. But yet,
up on our radar screen. We've had a visitation in our day. I'm not ashamed of those pictures, my brother and sister. It's on my radar screen.
Now, isn't it interesting how those message ministers misrepresent the cloud? You see, they manipulated it. They turned it 90 degrees, and then they inserted the picture of Hoffman's Christ. And by the way, Hoffman's Christ is actually Hoffman with the rich young ruler. They manipulated that as well by cutting out the face of Christ. They close cropped in on the face of Christ, and then they reversed that image so that it actually fit. So you have to do that. You have to manipulate the cloud, and then you have to manipulate the photo in order to make all of that work. So the question is, could you consider the representation of the cloud showing the face of Jesus Christ in it a deception? Well, we certainly do, because they don't show the original cloud with the blank space or the void space in the cloud. They just show the one in the picture, and they say, look, here, see the cloud, it had Jesus' face in it. Well, it really didn't. So now we're going to take a look at 5 more videos. This one's from Ferndale, Washington. This is the 8th of January, 2023. We have a minister talking about the cloud was the spiritual coming of the Lord Jesus. We've got David Seiler on the 13th of August, 2023. He's going to talk about the cloud doctrine. Then we've got Tim Pruitt. This is September the 2nd, 2023. He talks about the cloud. Then Tom Ray again, and this is going to be the 24th of July, 2023. He's going to make 2022. He's going to make some comments about the cloud. Then we're going to hear Jason Watkins talk about this on the 21st of November, 2022. He's going to be in defense of the cloud. So let's take a look at those videos real quick, and then we'll come back. Here we go.
I want you to notice in 1963, there was a cloud that appeared. And it was a spiritual coming of our Lord Jesus. Amen. Do you believe that? Yes. And we received that life. We received that spiritual coming. But one day, he's coming in a physical manner.
listen to this. The word overshadow, again, it means the word is transferred to a shining. A shining what?
Cloud.
A shining what?
Cloud.
Listen now. The word. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word is transformed into a shining cloud surrounding and enveloping the persons with brightness. You know, like the face of the sun.
Right, come on.
It's a, what is it? What's our subject tonight? Clothed with a cloud, as symbolizing the immediate presence and the power of God.
Hallelujah.
Now look at this, and I want to read it again. The word, next slide. The word is transferred to a shining cloud.
Praise the Lord.
Surrounding
Amen.
or enveloping a person with brightness.
Somebody said to Brother Branham, I think it was, well, dreams. He said, didn't Nebuchadnezzar have a dream? And wasn't there a prophet to interpret that dream? Did Brother Roy had a dream? Then there was a prophet to interpret the dream, and it brought it forth standing in the gap. And he said, in that dream, Brother Branham, can I say what he said? Can I say what he said? Yes, sir. There was a cloud on the mountain. Glory. Same cloud that was with Moses. Same cloud from the excellent glory of Mount Transfiguration. Same cloud that came down in this generation. Say, oh, there was no cloud. Okay, for you unbelievers, there's no cloud. But for me and my house, there's a cloud. What has that cloud done for you? It's changed my life, my intelligence, my thinking, my speaking, my acting. And it's changing me. I'm not coming less holy. We're becoming more holy.
A blast goes off in the West. The world still debating what it was, and they don't know. That was one of the most egregious points that people kept trying to say. Oh, prophet was wrong. It was a rocket. Nobody in science knows. That's the bottom line. The only scientific ever that reported on it was very thorough and concluded, and even in a second report, concluded we don't know. See? So it's preposterous to suggest that the Lord can say, oh, we know it was a rocket. We know it was this. And I say, I don't care what did it. Tell me what formed it into the profiled image of Jesus Christ. Looking at an earth. I mean, you can't make that up. That can't be an accident. And it's already too high in an atmosphere to be clouds. And that science knows that. That's why they're baffled. But I'm here to tell you, a blast that went off in the West, it was a spiritual shock wave to the world. A spiritual shock wave to the religions of the day.
Now, what did William Branham say about the cloud? We heard from these ministers, but what did William Branham actually say about the cloud? There are going to be several articles that I link in this video. They're from the Believe the Sign website. You have to remember that the cloud was one of the first things that the founders of the Believe the Sign site attempted to prove was actually true. Remember, Believe the Sign originated because Rod Bergen and his sons wanted to demonstrate that William Branham, without any reservation, was a prophet of God, and they wanted to prove the cloud vision was a supernatural thing. So you're going to see several pieces of very well researched articles that we're going to link down here in the description. The first one is the article about the cloud, and I've left the link up here in the study notes for you as well. But this is what William Branham said. And now the Life magazine picked it up, and I have the article here this morning in the Life magazine to show. Now here it is, the same time I was there. See the pyramid of the cloud? I was standing just below this. So that's William Branham standing in the gap, Jefferson, Indiana. This is what he said in June the 23rd, morning service, 1963. The cloud vision actually took place in February of 1963, okay? But was William Branham actually there? Well, here's the interesting part. Here's William Branham. Come follow me, Tucson, Arizona. This is June the 1st, 1963. He says, this is William Branham speaking. When I come, one thing was by a vision that I was standing above Tucson. Now he tells us he was in Tucson. Above Tucson up here when a blast went off. Well, Brother Fred was there when it went off. And they took that picture now you notice in the sky. And I didn't think much about it, never noticed it. So it began to impress me somehow the other day. And Brother Norma's father here, told me, said, did you notice this? And just as I looked, right there was them angels, just as plain as they could be. I wonder if you saw any angels in the picture. Just as plain as they could be. Sitting right there in that picture, see? I wonder if you saw any angels sitting in that picture. I'll go on. I looked to see when it was, and it was time same about day 2 or 2 before, a day or 2 after I was up there. I looked where it was at. northeast of Flagstaff or Prescott, which is below Flagstaff. Well, that's just where we was at. See, just exactly. This is what William Branham says, okay? Or was William Branham really there? Or was he on Rattlesnake Mesa near Tucson? Based on the testimony of Gene Norman's online audio testimony, and you'll find that at the, I believe, the Scion Web article, and the videos of Perry Green's testimony can be found on YouTube. If you're interested, you can go find those. William Branham was hunting on Rattlesnake Mesa, which is 10 miles north of Sunset Peak when the angels appeared. Now, technically there's no place called Sunset Mountain, although there is an area called Sunset just to the east of Sunset Peak. Now, Rattlesnake Mesa was also where William Branham returned in 1964, after which he told of a blast that prophesied judgment for the West Coast. The cloud appeared north of Flagstaff, around 200 miles away from Sunset Peak. Now you remember in the previous video, William Branham told us that he was right underneath the cloud. Here we have Brother Norman, right? And we have Gene Norman, and we have Perry Green telling us that he was actually around he wasn't in Flagstaff, he was actually around Rattlesnake Mesa. So where is that? Let's take a look at a map and take a look at that. Here's a map, okay? Right up here now, you'll be able to see the map. You can see where the cloud was right above Flagstaff, directly above Flagstaff where the picture was taken, okay? And then you'll see Springerville further south, Phoenix further south. Oh, Rattlesnake Mesa, clear down here by Sunset Peak in Tucson, Arizona, about 40 miles north. So you see that he was not sitting underneath the cloud, but it's interesting because he was supposedly taken up in the cloud. So the next question we have to ask ourselves is, was he even really there on Rattlesnake Mesa? I left the article up here. It's called The Timing of Cloud Events. This will walk you through it now. A lot of this is from Peter Deiser's book, Legend of the Fall. It's a significant research study on the life and teaching of William Branham. But here's what we know based on what William Branham says and based on the factual evidence. We know that on February the 28th, 1963, this is when the cloud was seen. A cloud was seen high in the skies over Arizona. At first, no one knew what caused the cloud, though science later established it was caused by the debris of a detonated rocket. In essence, William Marion Branham claimed that on February 28, 1963, he was picked up in a constellation by 7 angels while hunting javelina. He was thereby commissioned to reveal the mystery of the 7 seals. This claim cannot be substantiated. William Marion Branham was in Houston, Texas, and he had no idea about any mystery cloud until after he preached his series. Here's what it looks like. Cloud was seen on February the 28th, 1963. According to William Branham, there were 7 angels who picked up William Branham while he was hunting javelina. Now, javelina hunting season is from March the 1st through March the 10th in 1963. So it's interesting that the hunting season was actually after he says he was hunting javelina and was picked up by the cloud where the 7 angels were. What's really interesting, though, is that William Branham was in Houston, Texas, on March the 4th in 1963. Now remember, he didn't travel a lot by airplane, and they didn't have a lot of ways to get there except for to drive by car. Houston is, 2 or 3 days away from Tucson or away from Rattlesnake Mesa. He was actually in Houston on March the 4th, 1963. He traveled on March the 5th and March the 6th. So it took a couple of days for him to get to where he was hunting. He started hunting on March the 7th, 1963. Remember, the cloud actually took place February 28th. He started hunting on March the 7th, 1963. He shot his javelina on March the 8th, 1963. That means that he wasn't hunting on February the 28th 8th, 1963. So the claim is invalid. And that comes from Legend of the Fall. He said this. He says, he said, this is William Branham. This is a quote from the book Legend of the Fall by Peter Dizer. This is William Branham speaking. I was going hunting with a friend and someone called me. I had to go to Houston about his son, for he was going into the death row and is going to be killed in just a few days. They give me what they call an Oscar or whatever you want to call it for saving a life. Then we went hunting, he's talking about. So he was actually in Houston, and that's where the documentation comes from. He was in Houston at the prison trying to save this kid from dying on death row at the time he was supposed to have been there. All right, now you can tell me, Tim, you know what? You're totally mistaken. He was hunting. There are lots of excuses, but a lot of people say, no, you got your facts wrong. He was on Rattlesnake Mesa. People make pilgrimages to Rattlesnake Mesa, where the cloud came down. They actually take a look at the site where the cloud appeared. Although it didn't appear there, it actually appeared, if you remember the map, it appeared north of Flagstaff. So even if he was on Rattlesnake Mesa at the time, William Branham couldn't have been under the cloud or swept up into the cloud. So the next excuse is, well, even if he was in Houston, it was a different dimension and he was taken up into the cloud in a different dimension, right? That's actually what happens. You didn't need to be in the same dimension. But obviously there were eyewitnesses, right? There were witnesses to this event, right? I mean, right? You would think so. Well, let's take a look. This is William Branham speaking. This is the 30th, an evening service, the 30th of June, 1963. Is your life worthy of the gospel, Jeffersonville, Indiana? This is William Branham speaking. It's a mysterious cloud. The cloud is 26 miles high and 30 miles across. And that's what we were speaking of here. That's where the angel of the Lord came down and shook the place. It went so loud, right on me like that. Then all at once, something said, look up. There it was. I met Brother Fred and Brother Norman about an hour later when I found them. They were excited and talking about it. So William Branham tells us here that there were witnesses about this event. There it is, and science says it's impossible for any kind of a mist or anything get that high fog vapor. All right? So is that really true? Well, here's what Gene Norman says. And you'll find this, by the way, in the article called Rattlesnake Mesa on the Believe the Sign website. It's documented. You'll see links there that'll take you out to where this is posted. Here's Gene Norman. He says, Gene Norman was hunting with William Branham on Rattlesnake Mesa in early March of 1963 when something strange happened. Gene said, I hunted, probably about a half hour, and that blast went off. It sounded like I was just right above my head, and I looked up. I didn't see nothing. Yeah, I did. I seen something, but I didn't see the cloud in the form that it shows in the picture. When I looked up, I seen two long streaks like a plane leaving a trail. Two streaks with a great miles one way and miles the other way with a spot in between, a big spot, a space in between it. So obviously he didn't see the cloud. William Branham claims that he came over and he talked about the cloud with him. But we see here that Gene didn't see the cloud. Now we've also got an article here from March the 1st, 1963. This is an edition of the Arizona Republic newspaper. It includes an article called Shaken Up by Sonic Booms. This article tells of multiple sonic booms over the town of Springerville, Arizona. Remember, in the map, you saw Flagstaff and Springerville off to the east, and also then Rattlesnake Mesa, Sunset Mountain, and Tucson, okay, that were being caused by aircraft from the Williams Air Force Base. Now that's consistent with what Gene Norman saw. Sonic boom, two contrails, with some miles apart. Some of those booms were so loud they cracked windows in the town. And here's a picture of the article that you can take a look at about Springerville. But this, and it confirms what Gene Norman said, that the sound he heard and the contrails he heard were from jets flying out of the Williams Air Force Base in eastern Arizona. So some people say, well, a cloud, science can't explain it, because a cloud, first of all, a cloud, it doesn't just show up at night. This showed up and at night, and vapor and fog can't reach those sorts of altitudes. And I'm going to explain some of that to you now, because science can't explain it, by the way. This is what's called a noctilescent cloud. Now, what a noctilescent cloud is, and so the question has been also raised as to why was the cloud not seen prior to the appearing over Flagstaff. This is, by the way, in an article, I left a link here from the Believe the Sign article. It's called The Cause of the Cloud. To explain this, one has to understand a natural phenomenon called the noctilescent cloud. Noctilescent clouds, or night clouds, are tenuous cloud-like phenomena in the upper atmosphere. They are only visible in a deep twilight. They are made of ice crystals. Noctilescent roughly means night shining in Latin. They are most commonly observed in the summer months at latitudes between 50 degrees and 70 degrees north and south of the equator. These clouds can be observed only during local summer months and when the sun is below the horizon for the observer, but while the clouds are still in sunlight. That is, just as the sun's going down and the sun's rays strike the cloud, which wasn't visible before because it was too high, the sun's rays hit the cloud, and that's what you see. Now, they're the highest clouds in Earth's atmosphere, located in the mesosphere at altitudes at around 76 or 85 kilometers, 47 to 53 miles. They are too faint to be seen during the daylight and are visible only when illuminated by sunlight from below the horizon, while the lower layers of the atmosphere are in the Earth's shadow. Noctilescent clouds are not fully understood and are recently discovered meteorological phenomenon. But we have that. Also, what we do also know is that there were Thor rockets that were fired. And I want to talk about Thor rockets here for just a minute. So I want to tell a little bit of a personal story. Now, my wife has never been around the message. Janet's never, ever been raised in the message. She wasn't exposed to the message. She's been a Christian most of her life. She has never, ever been associated with the message until she met me, and I was telling her a little bit about the message, and she found it rather odd. But one of the things I said was, in the message, I said, and this is after I had left the message, I said, in the message, they believe that this cloud is evidence that God came down and had a visitation with William Branham. And she said, well, that's an aborted missile. And it shocked me. And I said, what do you mean that's an aborted missile? Well, her first husband, before he passed away, had been in the Air Force. Now, he'd been in the Air Force, and they were stationed at the Vandenberg Air Force Base when she was young. Vandenberg Air Force Base, as you may know, is a test range. And they used to shoot missiles out over the ocean and test them, and for direction and for distance and that sort of thing. She said that when they used to schedule when the missiles were going to go off, and you'd turn on the local access television station and you could see the missile launch. They'd have the countdown and the missile would take off. And if the screen went blank, and it did a lot back then apparently, when the screen went blank, they'd rush outside, because when the screen went blank, that meant they were about to abort the rocket because something was not correct. It was either going in the wrong direction or it was going out, it was somehow out of control or something of the nature, and they would abort the rocket. And the vapors from the rocket fuel would send up these circular clouds from the blast radius of the rocket, she said. You'd see the vapors in a circle. And there are lots and lots and lots of photos. If you go to the Believe the Sign website, NASA has lots of photos of aborted rockets. There were 3 rockets that were aborted in a row that NASA took pictures of after they were aborted. You can see the clouds that NASA has of these aborted rockets. They look remarkably familiar to this cloud. So we know that this was a Thor rocket. Janet said, yeah, it used to happen all the time. This is an aborted rocket. And because it was so high in the mesosphere, or the atmosphere, the wind, the slipstream carried it very, very quickly to the east at high altitudes. She said that used to happen all the time too. These are not unnatural phenomenon. They're seen quite frequently over the Vandenberg Air Force Base in that part of California. So that I just wanted to kind of make that personal comment to you about the cloud and about a personal eyewitness testimony of what the cloud was and how my wife has seen these clouds a lot from aborted Thor rockets at the Vandenberg Air Force Base. So let's wrap this up real quick. What do we come to conclusions? First of all, there was a cloud on, what we know is there was a cloud on February the 28th, 1963. It appeared over Flagstaff, Arizona, actually north of Flagstaff, Arizona. We also know that the cloud was a noctilescent cloud of vapor from an aborted Thor rocket fired at Vandenberg Air Force Base. There's documentation that demonstrates on the Believe the Sign website that shows that are historical documents from Vandenberg that demonstrate that the cloud was actually an aborted rocket, that they had fired a missile during that period of time and they aborted the missile. And so we have documented evidence that it was actually an aborted rocket from the United States Air Force press or the Public Relations Department to explain what the cloud was. Now, by his own testimony, William Branham was in Houston at the time of the appearance of the cloud, helping the son of a friend who was in prison for murder. Now, the excuse, not the defense, but the excuse by message believers is, well, he was in a different dimension. See, he was just in a different dimension when he was taken up into the cloud. Okay? That's not a defense for where he was when he says he was sitting right underneath the cloud at a hunting party in Rattlesnake Mesa, Arizona, which is well south of where the cloud was, well south, and where Gene Norman says, yeah, I looked up and there were contrails and a great big sonic boom, but I didn't see no cloud. So, we know that he was in Houston, and him being in a different dimension is an excuse. It's not a defense for William Branham. Branham claims that he was taken up into the cloud while he was hunting. So if he was in Houston, he couldn't have been in a different dimension because he says he was hunting when he was taken up into the cloud. By the way, Branham says originally there were 5 angels. Later on, he changes that to 7 angels, probably because the number was a better number in terms of numerology for William Branham. But he changed the story about how many angels were in the cloud. William Branham also claims he was hunting at Rattlesnake Mesa north of Tucson, but the cloud was over Flagstaff, Arizona, more than 200 miles away. Branham claims there were witnesses, Gene Norman, but Norman claims not to have seen any such cloud, but instead saw vapor trails and heard the sonic boom. The Air Force was operating supersonic aircraft in the area. Norman confirms that he saw 2 contrails in the sky, and we saw the newspaper reports from the Arizona Republic, and that backs up Norman's story, but does not do anything to back up William Branham's story. Here's the most significant part of it. And this is why I call it a deception for these ministers to show the cloud with the picture of Jesus superimposed or double exposed inside of the cloud. This is deception, all right? The photo of the cloud originally had no image of Jesus Christ. You need to manipulate the cloud by twisting it 90 degrees and the image by reversing it and cropping to the head of the image of Hoffman's Rich Young Christ with the Rich Young Ruler painting in order to get that image to fit into the cloud, in order to make it correct. You got to do a lot of manipulation to make that work. That's a lot of gymnastics to make it work. And we know then that those pictures that they show are completely deceptive. The original photo that was shown and the one we showed you in the magazine had no face in the cloud. We also know that message ministers use a manipulated photo of the cloud to reinforce William Branham's story of the face of Christ in the cloud, but that didn't happen. That didn't exist. So what we've demonstrated here is that William Branham's story about the cloud is complete nonsense. It's a complete fake. It's a fraud. We have the eyewitness, Gene Norman, who does not corroborate William Branham's story at all. We've got a timeline that demonstrates that William Branham was nowhere near the cloud when he said he was. We have corroboration that even if he was hunting, he was nowhere near the cloud, which was 200 miles north. So William Branham's story is completely without merit. We also have somebody who knows personally, because they experienced a lot of those vapor clouds in the sky, my wife, who tells us, it was a Thor rocket. We saw it all the time. That was an aborted missile. Sometimes they were low, sometimes they were high, but those rings of vapor that went out from the blast of the rocket when they aborted it, that was rocket fuel that stayed in the mesosphere or stayed in the atmosphere, and that's what you saw as a cloud. They saw it a lot. So we know that the cloud story is a complete fake. We know that it's a fraud. And this is a vindication that William Branham is supposed to be, that William Branham's supposed to deliver some sort of a message on the seven seals, which by the way, he faked, and there are videos of that as well. He plagiarized from somebody else, but we'll leave that the way that is. For the moment, that's an entirely different video. Listen, I appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch. We're going to show more of these vindication sorts of photos. These are important. The doctrine, the fundamental doctrines of William Branham's message are easily refuted. The vindications are easily refuted, just like this one. We'll talk about other vindications as well. But this was the first in that group of videos that I'm going to do. Hope you guys are having a great 2023. We're sure enjoying it down here in Panama. We look forward to being up there on the 1st of November, the last week in November. By the way, Ron Peterson, haven't heard from you. Would love to get in contact with you. Gerald McGran, haven't heard from you. Hey, Isaac Noriega, haven't heard from you at all. I'm happy to come to your church and talk to you. No problem, buddy. We're going to have a get-together of the folks that are in Phoenix and Tucson when we get into town. And we'll let you know when that's going to be. But we just look forward to seeing you guys up there. I hope you guys are having a great 2023. If there's anything we can do, the end card's going to tell you how to be in contact with us. God bless you guys. We love you, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.